I've been messing around with custom paintbrushes in Artrage 6. I've made a set of watercolour brushes. I painted this picture with it. I'm going to show you the brushes and how I use them. So let's get right into it. It wasn't going to be long before I decided to make some watercolour brushes in Artrage. Watercolour is my medium if I'm painting in traditional media. It's what I feel most comfy with. So I always like to have a dabble and see what I can do in the watercolour realm. So I've made myself a set of brushes. And as with all watercolour paintings, I always begin with a sketch. So I took a really simple subject to test out these brushes and just sketched in a few buildings. Didn't bother sketching in the sky, obviously. I'm going to do that all with the paint. And I've made, I think, 10 watercolour brushes. There was a few things that I struggled with trying to make. I couldn't really get a decent blending brush. I don't know where I'm going with that. I need to work on that a bit more to see blending, smearing. It wasn't working for me. I felt that the hard out edge brush palette knife, sorry, the harsh chaos, that's it, the harsh chaos palette knife was the best tool for sort of softening edges, and I didn't really come up with anything that I felt was better than that, so I used that in the painting. But as you can see, I made some really nice soft brushes for putting in a wet effect, and this is what I'm doing now with this sky. Selecting the colours off the colour wheel, I'm not choosing them off the photo. Getting a nice blue sky in there. And the beautiful thing about these brushes, I said it in the last video, you can just use them as erasers, which means you can sort of shrink the size of the brush and put in these nice hard edges for lifting out clouds and things. So that would be just like using a piece of tissue. I would quite regularly paint a watercolour, put in a wet sky, then use some tissue to lift out colour, and that's exactly what I did there. So it works really well for that kind of painting. You've got to be a little bit careful, or I found with the brushes that I was made that if I put too much colour on, it sort of looks really solid and hasn't got that watercolour look. I use the blend mode of watercolour in a lot of the brushes, which really properly gives you the effect of the colours shining through, giving you that translucent quality that all watercolour paints have. Once I got the sky in, I lifted out some of the colour over the buildings using the eraser again. I really love the erase mode. I think that's really good. It makes it so easy to lift colour out where you don't want it and still keep that same texture along the edge. So really, you can't get that, I don't think, in the brushes, the regular brushes that are in Artrage. So just lifting out a little bit more colour. I'm still only on 2 layers. I've got one layer which was for the pencil. I've locked that, left that at the bottom of the stack because as when I'm doing conventional watercolour painting, I like the pencil marks to be part of the drawing. They're not going to be erased at the end or hidden. Still putting in little bits of cloud. I really got carried away with the sky. I really like the fact that I could very easily put this detail in and then use the same brush just to add a little bit of colour into the foreground. And then I created this brush called Eraser Salt. So this is like putting a salt glaze on a painting where you just sprinkle rock salt on it, let it dry, and then brush it off. And by putting an eraser mode on this eraser salt brush, you can do that, which I thought was really nice. Now, I'd created a couple of brushes. One's called Glazing Wet, so that blends the two colours together, or 2, 3, or however many colours you're going to put on. As you put one next to it, it blends it. And then a Glazing Dry, which just overlays the colour. And I started painting these colours in, and then it dawned on me that like when I'm in Procreate, the best way to do it is have a really oversized brush, get it on in 1 or 2 strokes, and then use the eraser to lift out the colour, to sculpt away the colour from the area where you don't want it. So that's what I was doing. That's why it looks like I'm sort of randomly putting this colour on and then using the eraser to lift it away. So obviously you wouldn't do that in conventional watercolour, but I just felt it gave the most watercolour effect by doing it that way. It looks really quick and natural, just such a nice soft effect. So that's using glazing brushes. There we go. And now I'm going in with some dark colours for these trees. I'm doing exactly the same again. I am overpainting and then just cutting away with the eraser. Just by switching to eraser mode, it made it so easy. And I've left a little white edge around them. I thought that looked like the lights catching the buildings. That all added to it. Now these trees, I felt after I'd finished the painting, I could have spent a bit more time on them, but I didn't. And I just wish I had. They look okay, but they look a little bit unfinished, and I could have made them look a little bit more painterly. I wanted this path in the foreground to be dominant in the painting as well. Not dominant, but I wanted it to draw your eye in to the buildings. So they were, it was a definite thing that I wanted the path to be quite obviously there, but not sort of in your face. And I did struggle with that a little bit. So if you see, I use that salt glaze again, but if you see when I put the brush stroke on and made it really big, you just see the sort of nice brush strokes in there. And then I used my rigger to sort of scribble out the path, and I felt that was too much. That looks all right there. I didn't leave it like that. Perhaps I should have done that. Looks quite sort of in keeping with the rest of the painting. I love the salt glazing brush. It's a great way to sort of add texture to something really, really quick. And in the end, I went with, I was struggling with this. For some reason, I was trying to put too much detail into it. I don't know what I was doing. So just the final point of the painting, the final little bit, was really giving me an headache. And in the end, I just went with the glazing brush. I thought, just, stop messing about. Just get them in nice and big strokes, so it looks like it's part of the same painting. So eventually I was happy with what I did. So then I go in with the rigger brush, and you can see I'm just sort of putting in little bits of detail, shadows under gable ends or soffits and fascias, putting in a fence, putting a little bit of colour on that edge there, just getting the shadow on that little building on the right, adding some shadow into the field just to give that a little bit of form, and then put a few more fence posts in. Then I decide that I want to add a conservatory on one of the buildings, so I merge down some of the layers because I want to do a bit of erasing, but I want to erase everything under all of the layers behind the building. So I merge all of those layers down so I can erase out these highlights on this little conservatory that's attached to the side of that house. I scrape in a few details on the top of the edge, and what I'm going to do in a minute is use the rigger to scrape out or lift out colour on the trees to give the idea of branches. If you're doing that with a conventional watercolour, you could use the wooden end of the tip of the brush or a penknife or a sharp implement just to scrape out some of the colour, and you do that when the paint was wet so it would lift out nice. So there we go, that's my set of watercolour brushes in Artrage 6. Do you think I should make them available? Do you want a copy? Put a comment below, and if people want them, I will make them available in the usual way. If you like this video, big thumbs up as always, much appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, because I've got lots of videos like this and I would love to be sharing them with you. So hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.